Biker gang Torments single mom at Park Clueless. Her brother's a battle-hardened Navy SEAL. They think I'm just a school counselor, Sarah Palmer whispered, her voice barely louder than the rustle of oak leaves. But they couldn't be more wrong. On a crisp autumn afternoon at Eagle Point Community Park, Sarah stood at the edge of the playground, her heart thrumming beneath a vintage silver watch, an heirloom from her mother that ticked with more than just time. It was a reminder every second mattered, especially when danger lurked in the most unexpected places. Just moments ago, the park had been a sanctuary, children's laughter mingling with the soft hiss of wind through auburn leaves, neighbors exchanging greetings as they pushed strollers or tossed a football. Sarah, 35 and strong in both body and spirit, balanced her dual roles as single mother and school counselor with quiet grace. Her son, Jason, 6, and daughter, Emily, 8, chased each other around the swings, oblivious to the world beyond their joy. Paper's ungraded essays she was meant to finish lay scattered on a nearby bench, but for now, work could wait. Then came the engine rumble, deep, deliberate, and growing. Like predators circling their prey, 7 crimson-lacquered motorcycles emerged from the parking lot, engines growling under the fading sun. Their leader, Victor Viper Drake, dismounted first, an imposing figure whose leather cut bore the emblem of the Red Fang MC. His arrival turned the golden afternoon into shadows and threat. Sarah's pulse quickened, but she squared her shoulders and clutched her children close. The park's maintenance man, Eddie Rogers, froze mid-step, his wrench clicking against the concrete path. He was Sarah's secret ally, an unexpected friend who'd once saved her daughter's puppy from a stray dog, and now his presence provided a small measure of comfort. Viper and his crew spread out, cutting off every exit. Well, Viper drawled, voice smooth as oil. What's a school counselor doing here? Thought this park needed protection. His words dripped with mockery. Sarah felt Emily press against her side, Emily's eyes wide, and Jason's small hand slipping into hers, gripping tight. The watch on Sarah's wrist ticked loudly in her mind. Your time is precious, but right now it might be borrowed. Sarah took a slow breath. I'm not interested in a protection racket, she said, voice calm. Just taking my kids home. Viper's second-in-command, Lucas Reaper Ortiz, stepped forward, eyes cold. Not so fast, he hissed. Your personal contribution comes due today. Sarah's mind raced as she weighed every option, the straight path to her car 30 yards away, but blocked. Her phone buried in her purse, too exposed to reach. Then came a familiar, steadying whisper in her head. David. Her brother, a former Army Ranger turned protective shadow. He'd taught her to stay calm under fire. She had to buy time. She let out a controlled sigh. I need a little time, she said, just loud enough for Viper to hear. I'll get back to you. Viper's grin widened, showing teeth like polished blades. You've got until Friday, he said, his voice locking her in a frozen moment. Then, as if on cue, the riders mounted their beasts' engines, roaring to life, an ominous chorus that chased the last of the daylight away. Sarah watched the taillights vanish around the park's bend. Her children clung to her, trembling. Eddie Rogers stepped out from behind a tree wrench, still in hand. His dark eyes met hers, and in that instant Sarah saw not just a maintenance man, but a witness who would stand by her. The autumn breeze carried fallen leaves across the empty playground, and Sarah realized that by day's end, her quiet life would be forever changed, and that the real fight had only just begun. Did you really think you could outsmart me? Counselor Viper's voice crackled through the roar of his bike's engine, dripping with contempt. As the last ember of daylight vanished, Sarah Palmer felt a cold weight settle in her chest, but she refused to let it break her resolve. She tightened her grip on Jason's hand, the vintage silver watch on her wrist glowing softly in the park's fading darkness, a beacon of every hard-earned second that had brought her here. Only hours ago, Sarah had been grading essays beneath an oak tree, the golden leaves whispering stories of change. Now she stood face to face with the Red Fang MC, a gang whose threats had already sent shivers through Eagle Point. Viper Drake's leather cut gleamed menacingly, and the other members fanned out like a living trap. Their leader's snarled question about her intelligence and station in life revealed the ugly division still festering between those who wield power and those who nurture communities. "Your time is up." Viper continued revving his bike in a deliberately slow, taunting rhythm. Friday's not coming fast enough. But Sarah's mind was racing ahead. She had never been one to cower. Raised by a mother who taught her empathy could outlast fear, and a brother who trained her to stand firm under fire, she knew the only way forward was through action. And action carried risk. She let out a breath as deep as the issues she faced daily at the school students overlooked because of their family situations. Parents weighed down by bills, teachers silenced by bureaucracy. This park, this moment, was a microcosm of that systemic struggle. Sarah stepped slightly forward, heels pressing into the gravel. "You want payment, fine," she said, voice steady like a drumbeat. "But you'll get it from me personally. Meet me Friday 8 p.m. City Hall parking lot. I'll come alone." Her words rang through the hush, each syllable a deliberate choice to seize control. Viper's smirk flickered uncertainty cracking his facade. No one in Eagle Point had ever dared to negotiate from a place of perceived weakness. He studied Sarah's watch for a heartbeat, eyes narrowing. That watch had survived her mother's cancer, her own divorce, and countless nights pacing in worry. Now it embodied her unwavering spirit time would tick on her terms. "You've got guts, counselor," he growled. "Don't keep me waiting." With that, he kicked his bike into gear and vanished into the darkness, the gang following like wolves into a den. Sarah watched taillights dissolve into the night, feeling Emily's arm slip around her waist. "Mommy, are they gone?" Emily's voice trembled. Sarah knelt, brushing a stray lock of auburn hair from her daughter's face. "They're gone for now," she whispered, resting her hand on the watch. "But we have to be ready." Jason's sleepy eyes met hers, trust shining in the dim light. In that flash of love and fear, she realized her fight was no longer just for her family. It was for every child and neighbor who deserved safety, respect, and justice. Behind her, Eddie Rogers emerged from the shadows. His tool belt clinked softly, a reminder that everyday heroes often carried simple tools, a wrench, a first aid kit, or a few kind words. He nodded once, a silent vow of solidarity. Sarah rose, sensing the first drop of rain, a warning, and a cleansing promise. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, but she had drawn her line in the gravel. Whatever awaited her at City Hall Friday night would demand every ounce of courage she possessed, and perhaps more. As thunder rumbled on the horizon, Sarah checked her watch again. Time ticked toward the challenge she had set in motion. And in that charged moment, she understood that sometimes the bravest act is to keep talking, keep moving, and refuse to be caged by fear. Ahead of her lay an impossible negotiation, a test of will against a system that thrived on intimidation. But Sarah Palmer was no ordinary counselor, and her colleagues, her community, and her own heart were about to learn just how far she would go. The rain fell harder now, and Sarah turned toward home, each step echoing the promise she'd made, and the storm ready to break. "If they think I'm the only one showing up alone, they're in for a surprise." Sarah Palmer's words echoed in her own mind as dawn's first pale light filtered through her curtains. The vintage silver watch on her wrist glinted against the linen sheets, a gift from her mother that had survived storms far fiercer than this. Today was Thursday one day, until her deadline with Victor Viper Drake at the City Hall parking lot, and she refused to face him without backup. Over breakfast, Jason chattered about school projects while Emily traced leaf patterns on her cereal bowl. Their innocence made Sarah's chest tighten. Every action she took rippled outward, affecting these two lives. She scrolled through her phone eyes, landing on a text from her brother, David Palmer. "On my way." ETA 3 hours. Relief and resolve coursed through her veins. David, a former Army Ranger, was already mobilizing support among his old unit and trusted contacts. After dropping the kids at school, a risky move given the gang's ultimatum, Sarah rapped on Chief Grant's office door. Grant, the town's police chief, and an ally since her days as a school counselor, looked up from his cluttered desk. Sarah, he said, tension creasing his brow. I got your message. On the wall behind him was an aerial photo of the town red zones marking recent gang activity. We're tying up loose ends. But you asked for civilian support? Sarah nodded. I want Eddie Rogers involved. He's seen everything in the park. And I've arranged a community meeting at the old firehouse tonight. We need every neighbor on our side. Grant studied her for a moment, then slid a file across the desk. We'll provide discreet protection. But you need to lead this. They'll test you. By late afternoon, the firehouse roared with whispered determination. Small business owners, teachers, and parents crowded the wooden benches. A battered chalkboard held Sarah's handwritten agenda. Details of threat, 2 how to report, 3 safe zones, and at the bottom 4 stand together. Eddie, wearing his utility belt, stood sentinel by the door. Sarah's throat tightened as she surveyed the faces, some fearful, others defiant. She took a steadying breath. Thank you all for coming, she began. Last night, the Red Fang MC threatened this park, my children, and by extension, every one of you who walks these streets. Tomorrow at 8 p.m., they expect me alone at City Hall. But I won't face them without knowing you're behind me. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some clutched smartphones ready to live stream. Others nodded, recalling small injustices, graffiti on their shops, intimidation at the grocery store. One by one, people spoke. A local mechanic offered to check the bikes for tampering. A retired teacher volunteered her students as eyes and ears on patrol, and the mayor's aide promised emergency lighting in the plaza. This wasn't just Sarah's fight. It became everyone's. As twilight fell, Sarah felt the weight of the gathering's unity settle on her shoulders, a responsibility far greater than any school counseling case. She closed with a vow. We stand together. They see us as isolated targets. Tomorrow they'll see us as a community. The firehouse lights flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Eddie handed her a USB drive. These security camera feeds Red Fang members around town. Share them at City Hall. Expose them. Sarah accepted it, watching the crowd disperse with determined strides. Alone then, she touched her watch and recalled her mother's words. Time never stops Sarah, but courage can seize every second. Outside, rain began to patter on the roof, a cleansing omen or a warning of the storm ahead. Sarah slipped the USB into her purse and texted David ready. See you soon. Her heart pounded with risk and possibility. In less than 24 hours, she would negotiate with a gang leader on her own terms, but no longer alone. The rain intensified, drumming on the asphalt like an urgent countdown. Sarah stepped into the night, each footfall echoing her promise to protect her children, her town, and the quiet power of community. Tomorrow she would test Viper's threat against the force of unity, and that force would not be broken. The storm was coming, and Sarah Palmer was its eye. Nice turnout. Did you bring the whole town? Counselor Victor Viper Drake's voice cut through the night air, dripping with amused disdain as he dismounted his crimson bike. Sarah Palmer felt every head turned toward her in the deserted City Hall parking lot. Shopkeepers, teachers, parents, even kids clutching flashlights behind their parents' legs. Her pulse thundered beneath the silver watch on her wrist, a reminder that every tick carried her mother's bravery and her brother David's tactical training. She squared her shoulders and met Viper's sneer with steady eyes. I didn't bring them for decoration, Sarah replied, voice ringing clear. I brought them because we're no longer hiding in fear. She stepped forward, pulling the USB drive from her purse. You said you'd meet me alone. But I'm never alone when my community stands with me. With trembling fingers, she plugged the drive into a portable speaker rig Eddie had set up moments ago. The screen on a repurposed laptop flickered to life, and suddenly the lot was bathed in grainy footage, Red Fang MC members lurking near children's playgrounds, pawning off stolen goods at the corner market, colluding with shadowy figures in expensive suits. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Viper's grin faltered. Where'd you get this? He hissed. Sarah held his gaze. From every camera you thought you smashed, she answered. From every neighbor you thought you'd silenced. Her voice grew fierce. This is your legacy, intimidation and extortion. And this, she swept her arm toward the watching faces, is justice in action. The night wind whipped fallen leaves across the pavement, echoing the unrest brimming beneath Eagle Point's surface. Viper's eyes darted as he absorbed the revelations his men implicated local officials exposed. He glanced at the crowd as if seeing them for the first time, not as faceless targets, but as empowered individuals. His leather cut, once a symbol of dominance, now looked like a tattered banner against an ocean of witness phones and shining flashlights. Fine Viper spat, voice low and controlled. But this changes nothing. He mounted his bike, the engine growling like a wounded beast. You've just made it personal, counselor. Then he drove off into a wash of headlights, leaving a stunned hush behind. Sarah exhaled, feeling the weight of every set of eyes on her. She turned to Chief Grant, who approached carrying a stack of documents. Here, city council transcripts, he said quietly. Proof of their real bosses, a mining conglomerate planning to sell off our town. The papers trembled in her hand, like a second lifeline. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating Sarah's determined face. Her community had rallied, the night's bargaining had shifted power, but a deeper conspiracy awaited. As thunder rolled and rain began to fall in urgent staccato, Sarah slipped the documents into her bag. Tomorrow she would unveil the corporate puppeteers. But tonight, she had won a battle and discovered the next battlefield. The storm was far from over. They thought exposing the bikers was the endgame, Sarah Palmer muttered to herself as she sifted through the council transcripts in the cramped, flickering light of her kitchen. The storm outside raged, rain pelting the window like a furious applause. Inside, the vintage silver watch on her wrist felt suddenly heavy, its ticking echoing her racing heart. Just hours ago, she'd faced Victor Viper Drake with nothing but community footage and raw courage. Tonight, she held proof of something far more sinister, corporate hands pulling the strings behind the Red Fang MC. She spread the documents across the counter, emails, land deeds, offshore shell company registrations. At the center of the web sat Blackwell Resources, a mining conglomerate with deep pockets and deeper secrets. They'd quietly bought parcels of Eagle Point land through subsidiaries, planning to carve out rare earth deposits hidden beneath the town's foundations. The bikers' protection racket wasn't random intimidation. It was orchestrated chaos designed to devalue property, then scoop it up at bargain prices. Sarah's gut clenched. Her own neighbors, struggling farmers, small business owners, even her school's principal, all pawns in a ruthless game. A sudden crash of thunder spurred her into action. She grabbed her laptop and dialed Chief Grant directly. Grant, I need to move fast. Meet me at the old mill on Riverside Road. Bring the city attorney and the DA's file on Blackwell Resources. His calm voice crackled through the speaker. On my way. Be careful, Sarah. She hung up and glanced at the family photo taped to the fridge. Emily's bright grin, Jason's proud fist bump. Tomorrow would demand every ounce of bravery she possessed. But this night was for planning a strike at the heart of the conspiracy. By midnight, Sarah stood under the iced eaves of the abandoned mill, its rusted machinery whispering of bygone industry. Chief Grant and City Attorney Monica Reyes arrived, faces solemn in the headlights' glare. These documents, Monica said, scanning the transcripts, are enough to get an injunction on any sale or extraction license. Grant nodded, eyes reflecting the storm's fire. We'll need eyewitness testimony, bank records, coerced statements from ex-Reds willing to talk. A tense pause hung in the rain-slicked air. Monica met Sarah's gaze. We'll get them. But Sarah, this is bigger than a parking lot showdown. They'll fight back. Sarah swallowed, thinking of Viper's parting words. You made it personal. Now it was personal for everyone she loved. As they conferred, a shadow detached from the mill's skeleton frame. Eddie Rogers stepped forward, wrench in hand, and determination in his posture. I've been talking to Marion down at the livery, he said. She's willing to testify, said she saw corporate execs meeting with Viper's lieutenants, and there's surveillance footage from the motel on County Line Road. Sarah's pulse spiked. An entire network of evidence lay ready to break the case wide open. But at what cost? Exposing these truths would upend lives, put witnesses in danger, perhaps even mark her family as targets. She closed her eyes, drawing strength from the watch at her wrist, the inheritance of 2 women who had taught her empathy and tenacity. The clock's steady tick became a rallying cry. There was no turning back. "We move at first light," she declared, voice steady above the storm's roar. "Secure Marion, get the motel footage, and let's file the injunction before they can bury the paperwork." Grant and Monica exchanged a determined nod. Eddie offered a silent salute wrench, glinting like a promise. Lightning split the sky as Sarah stepped back into the rain, each drop a testament to the risk she embraced. Beneath the roar of thunder, she felt something shift within her, a resolute calm. The battle was no longer just for a parking lot or a playground. It was for the very soul of Eagle Point. And tomorrow she would lead the charge into the storm's eye, armed with truth, community, and unbreakable courage. The night was far from over, and so was her fight. "They thought I'd back down once they saw the papers," Sarah Palmer murmured, staring at the flickering lamplight in her living room. The storm outside had softened to a steady drizzle, but inside her heart raced like the thunder that had shaken Eagle Point. In her hands, she held Marion Fletcher's handwritten statement, trembling words detailing late-night weapon exchanges between Blackwell Resources execs and Red Fang MC lieutenants. This was the linchpin for the district attorney to freeze the mining permits, but it was also a beacon that could paint a target on Marion's back and on Sarah's. Earlier that morning, before dawn's pale glow touched the town, Sarah had slipped out to meet Marion at the old equestrian stables on Birch Road. The stables, once a proud pillar of Eagle Point's rural charm, had fallen into disrepair, its white paint flaking like frozen tears. Marion, wrapped in a threadbare coat, waited in the corner of a hayloft. When their eyes met, Marion's gaze was a crossroads of fear and relief. "They took my savings account number, Sarah," she whispered, voice raw. "Told me to stay silent or I'd lose everything, my farm, my home, my life." Sarah's chest tightened. She pressed the vintage silver watch against her heart, a symbol of her mother's unwavering faith in speaking truth, no matter the cost. Back at Sarah's house, she fed Marion a cup of strong coffee, the aroma mixing with the musty scent of paper and ink. As Marion recounted clandestine meetings under neon motel signs, Sarah's brother David arrived, his Army Ranger, bearing evident in the cut of his jacket and the calm authority in his posture. He greeted Marion with a nod, then leaned close to Sarah. "We need a safe house," he said quietly, "and an extraction plan." The implication sank like ice. Sarah's fight for justice was spiraling into a battle for survival. The day's light crept through rain-streaked windows as Sarah organized her evidence transcripts, video files, Marion's testimony, all scheduled to be delivered to the DA by noon. Yet each file carried a risk leaked to the wrong channel. They could vanish, or worse, be twisted to frame an innocent. The irony was bitter in a town built on promises of freedom. Truth itself had become a liability. Sarah's mind flashed back to her school counseling office, where she helped children dissect problems that seemed insurmountable. Now she was the one navigating a maze of corporate greed and criminal intimidation, with the lives of her neighbors and her own hanging in the balance. A sudden knock at the door jolted her. Chief Grant entered, wiping rain from his shoulders. "They're watching," he said, voice grim. "Blackwell hired private security." Sarah's breath came hard. Every alliance she'd built, the community meeting, Eddie's surveillance footage, Marion's courage could be unraveled by a single misstep. She closed her eyes and steadied herself, feeling the weight of the silver watch. It was more than a family heirloom. It was a talisman of hope passed down through generations that dared to challenge injustice. David mapped their plan on the kitchen table, Marion to the safe house evidence transfer at City Hall, under guard simultaneous press release scheduled for the local news outlet. The logic was daring a public reveal before Blackwell could mobilize full damage control. But in that boldness lay a twist. By forcing the narrative into daylight, they turned the conglomerate's clout into exposure. Sarah looked at each face, Grant's stern resolve, David's unwavering confidence, Marian's fragile bravery, and felt her own inner flame ignite. This was her moment to lead a revolt of truth against a fortress of lies. As they stepped outside, rain had stopped leaving the world slick and shining under streetlights. Sarah inhaled deeply, tasting possibility. The watch on her wrist caught the lamplight, each tick a challenge to move forward to defy fear. Tomorrow, when the injunction was filed and cameras rolled, Eagle Point would know that silence was no longer an option. But tonight, as Sarah locked the door, she felt the eyes of unseen watchers behind curtained windows. She whispered to the night, "We're not afraid anymore." Then she stepped into the darkness, heart pounding, wholly aware that the next sunrise would break more than light. It would bring either salvation or reckoning. "I never imagined corporate heavies would show up at my doorstep," Sarah Palmer whispered as headlights swept across the empty parking lot behind City Hall. It was 8 a.m., and a thin fog clung to the ground like broken promises. In her hand, she gripped the silver watch that had guided her through every crisis, each tick reminding her of her mother's credo. Courage isn't absence of fear, it's forging ahead despite it. Today's forge was red-hot risk, serve the injunction papers to Blackwell Resources CEO in person under full press glare, or watch everything unravel. Behind the courthouse columns, Sarah's brother David Palmer stood vigilant, flanked by two former ranger buddies in plain clothes. They formed a quiet cordon around the makeshift podium, where City Attorney Monica Reyes balanced a stack of documents and a microphone. A crowd of reporters and townspeople murmured in the morning chill, anticipating the showdown. "You've got this," Sarah Monica said softly, eyes locked with Sarah's. Then the moment arrived. The black luxury sedan glided to a halt before the entrance. The CEO, Richard Blackwell himself, stepped out, tailored suit, immaculate expression, a practiced mask of disdain. Sarah steadied her breath, steeling herself for his trademark smirk. Instead, she found surprise etched on his face, just for a flicker when she produced the court order. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwell," she began, voice clear as church bells. "By order of the District Court, this injunction halts all mining operations and property transfers pending full investigation into your company's collusion with the Red Fang Motorcycle Club." Every word landed like a hammer strike echoing across the marble plaza. Blackwell's polite veneer cracked. "Miss Palmer, you're overstepping. This is corporate governance, not a community theater." He turned to the assembled cameras. Sarah felt her heart clamp, but she forced her posture erect. "Corporate governance doesn't include extortion and intimidation. The people of Eagle Point deserve truth." She raised a folder embossed with the city seal. Marian's testimony, David's surveillance logs, city council minutes. "This is your Pulitzer moment," she added, "but instead of applause, you'll earn accountability." As reporters scribbled and camera shutters clicked, two black SUVs screeched into the lot. Out stepped men in tactical gear, private security hired by Blackwell. Their presence sucked the air out of the plaza. Mothers gasped. A teacher clutched a stack of essays. Sarah's throat throbbed, but she met each security guard's steely gaze. David slipped beside her, whispering, "Ready." She nodded once, pressing the watch's face like a battle emblem. Blackwell strolled forward, his security detail poised. "I suggest you celebrate while you can, counselor," he hissed, "because by noon I'll have this thrown out." But Sarah had anticipated this. She raised her hand, signaling David. In that instant, dozens of smartphones lifted, live streaming every face and uniform. "Hey, you're all witnesses now," she called out. "If you lay a finger on me or these citizens, America will watch." The security guards hesitated, their lines wavering under the weight of public scrutiny. Blackwell's lips thinned. He looked out at the crowd, shop owners he'd strong-armed, parents whose kids he'd threatened, neighbors he'd bullied into silence. In that charged silence, a single question hung. Could his empire of steel and dollars withstand the collective power of a community's conscience? Lightning split the neon clouds above, as if nature itself demanded an answer. Sarah felt the watch pulse against her wrist, a steady heartbeat, reminding her that time and truth were her allies. The private security relaxed their stances, uncertainty rippling through their ranks. Blackwell's mask slipped, revealing the first crack in his armor. But just as Sarah exhaled relief, a new rumble shook the plaza rumble of engines darker than any before. She sensed victory, then realized the war wasn't over. This next challenge would test every ounce of her courage. The fog shivered. The storm was gathering one final strike. Looks like the night's not over, counselor. The low rumble of a dozen motorcycles echoed down the courthouse steps, their headlights slicing through the dawn mist. Sarah Palmer's heart hammered. She had just served the injunction to Richard Blackwell under the watchful eyes of her community, but now Victor Viper Drake's backup had arrived to reclaim the power they'd lost. She pressed a hand to her vintage silver watch, its steady tick a tether to courage when the world threatened to unravel. Only hours ago she had stood victorious as corporate giants and criminal thugs collided in front of City Hall. But power deals run deep, and vengeance is a cold mistress. The Red Fang MC, their bellies full of bloodied pride, now fanned out across the plaza. Their leader Viper dismounted, last eyes gleaming with grudging respect. "You're tougher than I expected," he called, voice carrying over the growls. "But let's see if your friends here back you up when things get real." Sarah inhaled, recalling her brother David's words. "This is the moment we either fall apart or rise together." She scanned the crowd, shopkeepers shielding their faces, students clutching flashlights, parents linking arms. Then from the shadows, Eddie Rogers emerged, cracking a wrench against his palm. He wasn't alone. Marion Fletcher, safe house survivor, joined him, clutching her own worn watch. The town's librarian held a cell phone broadcasting live, and teachers stepped forward, papers fluttering like flags of defiance. It was a tableau of unity, a symbol that community trumps terror. Rain began to fall again, each droplet a challenge issuing from a sky as angry as the bikers. Sarah's throat tightened. Logic screamed retreat, but empathy demanded stand fast. This land, she began, voice rising like wind chime song, is more than dirt and profit margins. It's where our children climb trees and learn to dream. You can't bulldoze that with threats. The motorcycles pressed nearer, their engines humming with contained violence. In that moment, a twist. Chief Grant's voice crackled over Sarah's earpiece. Hazmat team disguised as cleanup crew, moving in sarin neutralizers ready. The bikers faltered as officers in orange vests emerged, sandbagging entry points and placing tamper-proof surveillance pods. Blackwell's private guards stiffened before the unscheduled arrival of state troopers and federal agents primed to enforce the injunction. The mob dispersed under the combined might of legality and community determination. Viper kicked at the wet pavement, frustration etched on his leather-bound shoulders. "You win." This time he spat before mounting his beast. As the last engine roared away, he added, "But Eagle Point has bigger secrets buried. We'll be back." And with that, the mist swallowed their retreat, leaving Sarah amid rising sun and puddles, reflecting daybreak. Sarah's knees trembled, adrenaline ebbing into exhaustion. She felt the weight of the watch, its hands circling toward noon, symbolic of time's relentless march. She looked to the faces around her, David's proud nod, Monica Reyes brushing rain from her notes, Eddie's determined grin, Marion's tearful relief. Each person embodied a truth: justice is forged by collective will, not solitary valor. As the storm clouds parted, Sarah lifted her eyes to the horizon. Eagle Point stood battered but unbowed, its people awakened to the power of unity against corruption. Yet something hovered at the town's edge, an unseen threat still stirring in the earth beneath, waiting for its moment to emerge. Sarah clenched her fistwatch ticking by her side and whispered to the wind, "We rebuild, we protect, and we stand ready, because this story is far from over."